Today we're working on the Mazda Demio, and I covered this Spacers before as a sponsored product I got for a huge discount from JSPEC, and these are their own brands which they order. So I've been preparing a bit. These are some old winter tires. They've seen better days, but at least they're switched on the right way. So the traction is going to be inside the frame of the car, which is the most important thing here for those back tires, but the rest is pretty good for a front wheel drive car like this. So a couple of problems. These tires, which is the all-around tires, are pretty huge. A bit too huge for this particular model of a car, but I like them, and I like to have a lot of rubber when it comes to a smaller car like this, for several reasons. Mostly for more friction, more stance from the ground in case of, slight off track when you need to go through gravels or forest ways or whatever. Kind of different roads here in Sweden. So, but some stuff has happened during the years here, and it has cracked a bit on the fender, which I repaired kind of fast, just to take screws and folded the metal. Also applying hammer finish so it wouldn't rust anymore. And it has quite a lip. It's not really easy to record this, but as you can see from this distance of my finger to the outside of the fender. So I need to fold this part in order to make this wheel to still fit on the car. Which comes with a second problem, the spacers. As from what I can measure just by hand, the tire will rub with this volume. So this is why I took the winter tires with me, and this car is more or less just used during the winters, so it's not going to be a problem. I can probably sell these tires later on or do something more fun with them, who knows, but I'll think that this will be installed right now, and I will address the other issue of bending the lip a bit more using the standard equipment as you usually do, using a heat gun and a hammer over there, and just slightly massage the whole fender until the lip actually bends itself, and hopefully it doesn't get in the way of these tires. So we'll see how that goes. I'll start by removing the tires and installing the spacers. Alright, let's see how hard these wheel nuts are fastened after a whole year of driving in snow and shit. Huh, going right off. Yay. Let's see here. So this piece of crap emergency spacer, which was something I really needed to install just because these wheels are so big, so it didn't rub against the lowered springs as well, which is looking awesome. Anywho, time to fit the spacers. Oh yeah, perfect fit. So what I need to do right now is to remove some of these rust buildup, which is just very common when it comes to drum brakes and brakes in general, discs, rotors, whatever. Just to make sure that the spacer doesn't get stuck permanently from friction. But again, something new for me. These spacers are coated with some sort of a very fine layer of rubber metallic finish, as you can see here. So it's not gonna get stuck, but I follow my routines just in case. You never know, because you still have bolts. It's gonna be next to the drum brake. So just a little bit with sandpaper and put out some little oil just to get extra sure it doesn't get stuck. See here, always save these extra sandpaper fitments from machines because you can always use them later. So good tip for saving money. Also a bit easier to actually use because you can fold them like this and get into tight places, and they're really rigid, as you can see. So also a good tip, comes from an amateur like me. So just getting the excess rust buildup, which isn't much at all. It's just almost like sand and gravel. It gets stuck, but it's still rust. As you can see, it's mixed within the drum brake here. But other than that, it looks pretty good. So I never changed these drum brakes, and they probably are original on this car since it got released from the factory. The previous owner has not changed the brakes on this car from what I can tell. So something like that. Just be sure there's no crap in between the fitments. There we go. Gonna blow it off with my gun. The extra topping here, I use X1R, which is a brand I've been using for quite some time. I buy this from Street Performance here in Sweden. It's a pretty common product. You usually don't see them on normal retail shelves, but for performance parts and stuff like that, X1R has a couple of special areas when it comes to like engines and lubrications of well, brake calipers and stuff like that, because they can handle a lot of friction. In this case, this is an oil you use for loosening up high friction areas, bolts and stuff like that, but it's also good to apply these before installing products on older things, but also newer things, because it just keeps it lubed. And from what I can tell, all the time I've been using these, I have never ever got a bolt or a pad or a brake caliper or whatever, or a disc for that matter, stuck on the car when also always using these, especially when changing just the bolts when putting on winter tires or whatever. So what this does is that the little oil that comes out is very bubbly, and it starts to work itself on the surface. So I will be applying a little here. Where I know that it's gonna get stuck with the spacer. And I'll also show you how it starts working itself into materials. Let's see here. So this is just a normal fitment here for the bolt. As you can see here, it's bubbling, and it's not just pouring everywhere, so it gets stuck on there. So you just apply a small amount, almost like a bad painting. Anywho, so that's enough, just to make the spacer not too stuck on with, you know, rust or gravel or whatever during its time installed, because I'm probably never gonna remove this at all later on. So on to the installation of the spacer. All right, on to the installation. So obviously you're fitting in your stud bolts right here from the car, and the wheel will be installed on these stud bolts from now on. So just slightly get this on. It has a bit of movement, so you have to be careful to install this as symmetrical as possible. And as you can see here on the bolts, they are halfly spherical, and that's the part that's going to go down, and spacer of course. So also tech tip when always setting bolts like this: never use a machine in the beginning, always use your hands. Always start diagonal, as such. Just loosely, test it out, no movement, then you can further install the rest of the bolts. And as I said before, the X1R oil works fantastic. I don't even feel any restrictions whatsoever when applying these bolts. As you can see here, smooth. Get these on. There we go. Nothing fantastic. Then just a simple installation like this. There we go. Looks pretty good. And always use an extra tool just to check so the fitment actually did get in there. Huh. Or if you can't, you just can't. The holes was pretty small. I can't get in there. Or whatever. Usually you have to use an extra tool just to be sure that the bolts are really in there. So I'll be using an extra tool later on just to fasten them. So I'll take some extra punches from the gun. Look pretty good. Not gonna overdo it anyway. And now comes the interesting part. The huge tires and wheels. Yeah, so it's all the way down at the down at the surface, they're touching each other, which is good. But from what I can tell, yeah, it's probably gonna rub. Well, I'll install this tire and lower it down just to see how much, and if possible, just a couple of hits on the inner side of the fender will solve that problem. But from what I can tell right now, I can put my whole hand on the other side of the tire, which I couldn't before. So it doesn't really, it's not gonna rub against the lowered springs, which is really good, because the other smaller spacers was like maybe half a finger length or such. Now I can put my whole hand in there, which is good. And the entire car is gonna get wider, which is gonna increase the performance of trackability on the roads from now on. So, looks good. Gonna start installing the bolts again. Always diagonal. And here's another good tech tip. Bolt locks like this. You have an extra fitment you use on the tools. You have this bolt with a weird kind of pattern it has to fit. And it looks like this. Really cheap security for not getting your wheels stolen. They can still get stolen, but it's much harder for the thief to try to drill something into the bolt and then make it more able for them to turn. And it mostly crack, so it doesn't work at all, and it gets stuck there, which is better than getting the whole tire and wheel stolen. So, good tech tip for security on the car. I have it on all my cars. So I'm not gonna put it on right now, because I'm just gonna try out the fitment. So getting this on. There we go. Nice and snug. Now we're gonna lower the car and see how it looks. There we go. So it looks awesome, but we have a problem, of course, which I already addressed. The lip inside the fender is getting my finger stuck, as you can see here. It's pretty tight, which makes this installation not the perfect one when it comes to reliability on this car, but it can be fixed. And from what you can see from a wider spaced wheel like this, it looks really cool. So it's not just better performance for the car in terms of traction, but it also looks great at the same time. More of a track car look. And with these tires it's gonna look just perfect. So, fixing this problem, and hopefully if it's not too snug, I'm just gonna install the winter tires from now on and see if I can do something else later. We'll see. Okay, so a couple of things before starting to bend the fender, roll the guards in here, is to have, you can have a better hammer than this. I usually use a small sledge. You can also use a big sledge, depending on how much you want to punish your car. But the whole portion of this car is just going to be half a circle instead of the whole circle, because this is plastic. So I won't be folding that, and I don't think the tire permanent, in general, not going to hit the plastic. If it does, you have to cut it down with a sawzall or whatever. But in my case, I have pretty much paint and rust protection inside here, so I'm just gonna take some tape like this. Doesn't matter what kind of tape you're using. These are for when painting cars and houses and whatever. So I'll just put some on the tip of the hammer, just so it doesn't rub or crack so much metal when I'm hitting the fender. So softer surface when hitting, and as you can see, you can hit a bunch of times and it's gonna probably go through depending on how you hit, so you can just apply more tape. And the other part is a heating gun. You just use like this and heat the fender where you're gonna hit, and this is to prevent the paint from cracking, which it can do when just banging on cold metal with paints and finish and clear coats and everything on it. So just to avoid those things, you heat up as much as possible. You're going to be pretty hot before you start banging on it. You can also have it at the other hand and keep hitting with the other and go back and forth. So depending on your technique, you can do whatever. I'm just going to heat everything up and start banging and heat again and do that back and forth until I'm satisfied. From what we can see, I don't think it's going to be so hard at all. So alrighty, pants. Let's see if I managed. So the finger test works great. The hand, yep, coming right through, no problems whatsoever. So as you can see, it's a lowered car, of course. You're still gonna have some problems when putting too much weight on the car, of course. If you put a whole family in here, maybe have a bunch of stuff in the trunk, whatever, it's still gonna rub, of course, but it's not gonna rub and destroy the car, which it could have if I didn't fold the lip inside here. So pretty good work, if I should say so myself. I can almost stick the entire hand in here, which was impossible before. As you could see, I could barely run one of my fingers without touching the guard. So pretty good, which leads me to another thing I'm going to do with these tires in another video. So I'm still going to put on the winter tires so I can use the car in case of emergencies or whatever before I'm finished with these wheels, because as you can see, they have been tortured some by the previous owner. But I'm going to use a quick and interesting technique to cover that in another video. Also, as you could see from my massaging of the guard, the entire tape almost fell off, which could be an indication of how much you're actually banging on your fender, and you could probably stop when all the tape is gone. Then you probably know that you're probably finished. So that's another take tip. Alright, so I'm done. All the winter tires are on, all the spacers are on, the fender lip from the roll guard is all fixed. With the winter tires on, I have a lot of room here. So as you can see, it looks pretty cool. So not sure if I'm actually going to change back. We'll see what happens, but pretty stoked about this. The car looks awesome. As an extra bonus, as you can see here, it's a lot wider even with the smaller tires on. Looks pretty good. And it'll be interesting to have a ride in this and see how much it can perform now that it has more traction. So that's that. Onward to the next project for this car. And let me know in the comments if you liked these rims better, those classical steel rims, makes it a little more hillbilly, or off track. Or if you want me to keep using these with a slight touch up. Yeah, that's for me. Pretty stoked about this. Okay, so I'll see you guys in another update. Hope you enjoyed this video, and check the description for parts, sponsorships, and more tips about doing this. Alright, see ya.